Hello and welcome to Milling About, a one-of-a-kind show that brings the best of Minneapolis right into your home. I'm your host, Brianna Rose, and we have a great show lined up for you today. First, we'll have local talent accordionist Dan Turpening, then Doug Snyder of the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization will be here to talk about the riverfront. This month, we're going to be doing a small business spotlight, and we'll be speaking with an owner of the Minneapolis Boxing Club. Michael Rainville Jr., our history columnist, will be back with some more local history. And then Be That Neighbor will be showcasing their community member of the month, Erik Sather of Lowry Hill Meats. We hope you enjoy today's show. Now let's get started. For today's local talent segment, I have with us accordionist Dan Terpening. Dan, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So I have to admit, I have never met an accordionist before, and I was just curious, how did you get interested in playing the accordion?
When I was a kid, my parents took me to an old film, and it was a Fellini film, an Italian director at the Art Museum in Minneapolis, and there was an accordion player in the film, and I just fell in love with the music. It's all the music by Nino Rota was the composer for Fellini, for a lot of Fellini films. So beautiful music, and I found a really good teacher. Everything fell into place. I also repair accordions, and my teacher learned how to repair in Germany, and she happened to open a school in Duluth when I was living in Duluth, going to school for art. So that's how that all came together.
And I noticed in your background, those are all accordions. Is that correct?
Those are all accordions, yes. This is a small fraction of the accordions.
A small fraction, wow. Well, I was wondering, so, I mean, it's COVID, so there's not a lot of live performances going on. Are you doing any performances now, or pre-COVID, where would people have found you performing?
Well, the latest things I've done are at the Black Forest restaurant, which is a great place in South Minneapolis. And now those were outdoors in their patio, so I think those are done.
Yeah, the weather's changed a bit.
I told them that I'm very durable if they want to hear me for later. So nothing for now.
Nothing for now, okay. And then also, do you teach, or do you offer classes?
Yep. So I give accordion lessons, just one-on-one, and I had been doing it out of my shop here. Now I'm doing it over Zoom, which works out pretty well.
That makes sense. And where would people, if they were interested in getting a lesson, where would they find that information? How could they contact you?
Well, my website or my, can I give my phone over the?
Well, we can have that available in an article, or
sure. Have that in the art. Yeah, sure. And let me give my website. It's Accordion Shoppe, and I spelled SHOPPE.com.
Okay.
So that's my website.
accordionshop.com. Great.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you wanted to play a little live for us.
Yeah, I would love to.
Great.
I'd love to. Yes. I'm going to play a couple songs here. First one's a Blue Skirt Waltz, and then there's a German song that in the mountains that people probably might know. Tilt the camera a little bit.
That was great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. And I think
You're welcome.
that's it. That's all we
Great.
needed to do.
Great. Well, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And like Becky said, she'll make sure that you know when this is going to air. And when we have your clip cut out, we'll have that for you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
All
Great.
right.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Great to meet you.
Yeah, you too. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Today I'm with Doug Snyder of the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization. Thanks for joining us, Doug.
Oh, thanks for having me, Brianna. It's always a pleasure to come on and share what our organization does and how we work with other members in the community to enhance the Mississippi River.
Okay, so in that vein, what exactly does the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, also referred to as MWMO, do? And how does it relate to the Mississippi River?
Sure. So the MWMO is a special unit of government, a local unit of government that was created by an act of the legislature in the mid-'80s called the Metropolitan Surface Water Management Act. And we're very narrowly charged with working on water quality, surface water quality, surface water quantity issues, so localized flooding, that kind of thing, and then habitat improvement. So we predominantly work with the member communities of the watershed that have signed on to the Joint Powers Agreement, and there's 8 of those. They are Minneapolis, St. Paul, Lauderdale, St. Anthony Village, Columbia Heights, Fridley, Hilltop, and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board is also a member. And so we work with those partners and other partners in the community to work on those water quality, water quantity, and habitat issues into areas that drain directly to the Mississippi River.
Wow, that is a lot of groups coming together. So what are how is the riverfront changing in Minneapolis right now?
Well, it's actually been slowly changing over many, many years. So of course, when everybody knows about the milling district, and that was the common use along the edges of the river for a very long time, was timber milling, other kinds of industrial uses. It transitioned into some commercial uses, and then with the lock and dams being created, it actually became the uppermost harbor on the Mississippi River system. So that's the old Upper Harbor Terminal, which is now being looked at for redevelopment. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So those commercial industrial areas are now being transitioned, and we want to take advantage of that transition to work with Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to try to turn as much of the riverfront as possible into publicly accessible lands where people can get down and enjoy the river, enjoy that habitat that's being created, understand more about the connection that they could have with the river as an amenity very near to them. And it's surprising how many people just don't know what's down there by the river, even though they've lived in Minneapolis for a long time. We have been working to change that commercial industrial riverfront into more of a park and habitat setting since I've been with the watershed almost 20 years now.
Well, and I was just wondering, what are some examples of NWMO's projects that maybe have made a noticeable change on the riverfront?
Sure. So we've We initially started working quite a bit in the Mississippi River Gorge, so between Ford Dam and lower St. Anthony Falls Dam, with the park board to do improvement of the trails that are along the river, access to the river at various points along there on both the east and west banks, along the Winchell Trail, making sure that those areas where the trails were actually safe to be on and they weren't eroding away. In the last number of years, we've really focused a lot of our work on the upper river. So from the central riverfront downtown area, north up to the Camden Bridge and beyond. Some of the projects we've done in that area have been Halls Island, working with the Park Board, again, working with the Park Board and Park Foundation's Waterworks, which is recently coming online. We've done numerous bank restoration projects all the way in Minneapolis, but all the way up through Fridley as well, and with Anoka Parks in Fridley. And of course, there's our own Stormwater Park and Learning Center that's at Lowry, or just north of Lowry Bridge, for people to come out and kind of learn about prairies and other techniques that we use to manage stormwater in the area. And then finally, if it's it's kind of coming soon sort of thing, is that Upper Harbor Terminal project, where it's 50 acres right along the river, and we're trying to work with the city and the developer there and Park Board to really develop a kind of a place that will not only host people for living and working, but also for recreating and provide good habitat for the critters that live along the river themselves.
Oh, that's great. The goals of your organization, and also trying to connect people with the river while keeping it a great place for the wildlife as well. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us, Doug.
Sure, it's been a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you.
Yep.
This month, we're doing a small business spotlight, and we have Heidi Amouta of Minneapolis Boxing Club. Hi, Heidi. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Brianna. I'm happy to be here.
So I wanted to start just by asking, how did Minneapolis Boxing Club get started? Is this something that you've always wanted to do, or did it kind of take you by surprise?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. Boxing in itself took me by surprise, but once I started really digging into it, and I had incredible mentors from when I've started all the way up to now, business owners, boxers in their own right, who have inspired me along the way. And then when I met my husband, Joe, who is co-owner with me, he and I on our very first date had dinner, and we talked about what our dreams in boxing were. And the end goal for both of us was to have a club of our own. Or to be a manager of a club that felt like ours. So yes, boxing took me by surprise, and I never expected to be a gym owner, but in the relationship that I'm in and with the dreams that we both had because of the sport, it just kind of made sense.
Okay, so it kind of took you by surprise, but something that you had kind of dreamed of. Now, a lot of people think of boxing as kind of intimidating, and something that they wouldn't, they might think they're too old or they're too out of shape to try. What would you say to people who think that they couldn't start boxing or come to Minneapolis Boxing Club and take classes?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. When I started, I was 23. I had never been in a gym before in my life. And I was several pounds, more than 10, overweight. And I was able to do it. We also have athletes in the gym who are in their 60s, approaching 70, and they're still going strong. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is that we work with any athlete at any age, at any level. And in a group class, you may be next to someone who is 10 years younger than you, 10 years older than you, may have 5 or 6 years more or less experience than you. But you're all working on your own thing, right? You may be doing the same workout, but everybody's got a little bit of a piece that they're working on. And because it's such a technical sport, it's really just fun to dig into the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts. And I think that's what's compelling about sports at any age, right? Whether you're 11 years old and you want to give this a try, or you're 65 and you're like, I want to do something other than what I have been doing for the last 15 years, I can come in and learn a technique, learn a skill. And we work with people of all ages. So we have a youth program that starts at age 9. And like I said, we have clients up to age almost 70. So runs the gamut.
I was going to say that is a wide range for sure. And that's great too. And your point about it being, no matter where you're at, even if you're in a class with a bunch of other people of varying skill levels, you're kind of working on you. And I think that's a great part about boxing is you don't have to be the best when you're starting, because you're just starting and you're learning and you can build from there.
Exactly.
So COVID has meant a lot of changes for many businesses. And how have you guys had to adapt Minneapolis Boxing Club to meet those challenges?
Yeah, for sure. Very first and foremost, we've just limited capacity, right? So I think like most other places that serve the public, whether they're restaurants or other clubs or entertainment facilities, we've limited the number of people in class, which is really nice because you get this really intimate class experience. We're asking that people register in advance and that they're signed up for every single session that they're in here for, whether they're coming in on their own time for open gym or they're coming in for a group training session, so that we always have basically an attendance roster for the day. And then we're also running private training sessions, and we're trying to spread those out during the day so that we don't overbook our capacity. We're keeping everybody spaced out. We've created lines on the floor so everyone has their own little like box to hang out in. And we're just limiting shared equipment. We've upped cleaning procedures, right? But we found that it's worked out pretty well, and all of our coaches are staying masked, and so far, fingers crossed, everyone's healthy.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Heidi, and sharing more about Minneapolis Boxing Club. And we hope some of our viewers will take you up and try out a class.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. Great to be here.
Bye. This month, Claudia Kittok, Director of Be That Neighbor, will be speaking with their Neighbor of the Month, Erik Sather of Lowry Hill Meats. Claudia, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can learn why Erik has earned this title.
Thank you, Brianna. I learned about Lowry Hill Meats when they started their business in a neighborhood my son was living in. And my son had stopped in and immediately called me and said, Mom, you've got to get over to this butcher shop. And I have to admit, I didn't get there right away. But once I did, we have been absolute faithful customers ever since. So Erik, would you like to tell us how you got started on Lowry Hill?
Sure. I think there's layers to it, I think. But long story short, I grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota. And then after high school, started cooking professionally. And I could just kind of notice that disconnect between like prepared product that restaurants would serve or what customers were eating at restaurants. And then that connection that we had on the farm with, the whole animals and just that camaraderie of the grower, the producer, the retailer. And, through my years in restaurants, lots of people would always ask, where can we get this? How can we prepare this at home? So I think Lowry Hill Meats was kind of that venture in, a retail butcher shop that has a story behind the product, and a butcher shop you want to hang out at. Like it's, meat cases can be stressful, and you get stuff and you leave, or they're overwhelming. And, I think, obviously with the pandemic, things are different now, but, really getting people engaged in where things come from and how you'd cook something and maybe something different and using whole animals. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's an incredible place to go. It's a place where you walk in the door and you're greeted by name and everybody knows what your favorite things are and there are suggestions that are made. And I grew up on a farm, so it reminds me a lot of being on the farm in small towns.
Yeah. No, it's fun. I love it.
Erik, tell us about what Lowry Hill has done for neighbors and how you have become involved in helping people.
Well, I think, one, like just with the business model, really, getting in front of people and kind of explaining more of the story of, whole farmers and where things come from and how you prepare things and getting the whole animals. There's not always this muscle, but there's something else, and just kind of, hopefully telling the story from the grower's side as far as, what really goes into the product that we eat.
And you've done some programs where you've donated food. You've done programs where you have your staff has used part of their tip money to help different programs. Would you talk about a few of those, please?
Yeah, we've done quite a bit. Through the summer, especially after George Floyd. There was days we would just make a bunch of sandwiches and drop them off either on 38th in Chicago or the Sheridan Hotel was housing homeless people for a while. We dropped food off there, but we were a little more organized with staff donating tips to like the North Side group. Pimento Kitchen. They did a really good job of just coordinating and organizing outreach. So we would just, funds from our Friday night barbecue that we did kind of as an auxiliary fund thing. We would just, all those sales would go to that. You introduced me to Greg Pavette with the Humanity Alliance. And so he's been able to come in, and it's cool, especially with customers not coming in right now. There's always extra product, whether it's just stock or soup or sausage. And he's been able to come in and just really be excited about getting some product and delivering that to people that need it.
That's awesome. Last question. How can people help?
There's so many ways, I think. It's really amazing. And I think, we have to get back. The end of the summer was a little bit quieter for us, but, we have to figure out how to just get back on track and just staying in front of people, whether it's, where product's coming from, where product's going, how people can help. But us also, reaching out to new people. We're always learning, and I think things are different all the time. So how can people help? I think it would just be, maybe take some initiative yourself into just donating, matching something, find something that you're interested in. I think that's been the biggest thing for us as we talk with the group. It's like, yes, we're passionate about 500 things. It's like, but what do you really need to focus on? And for us, obviously it's food and community, and we try to keep that rolling. And I think it's going to come back with the barbecue too.
Thank you so much, Erik. You do a wonderful job, and we're just so proud to have you on as our Neighbor of the Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you both.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Welcome back to Meandering Through Time with our history columnist, Michael Rainville Jr. Michael, it's great to have you back.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So last month, you took us meandering through time back to the oldest cemetery in the city, Maple Hill Cemetery, which is now Beltrami Park. So what do you have in store for us this month?
Well, now that we're in the season of thankfulness, I'm going to tell the story of the 1982 Thanksgiving Day fire and the brave firefighters who saved downtown Minneapolis. So back during the late evening on November 25th, 1982, Thanksgiving Day, two teenagers crawled through a snow fence, broke down a plywood door, and started exploring the partially demolished former location of Donaldson's department store. As they were rummaging around, they stumbled upon some matches and a butane torch. After the two boys started a fire, it quickly spread to the 5th floor of the Northwestern National Bank building. 80 on-duty firefighters and 18 fire trucks responded to the 5-alarm fire immediately. Smoke made its way through the skyway and filled skies were just ablaze in downtown. The fire was spreading quickly, and there was fear that all of downtown would go up in flames. So, 50 off-duty firefighters and 4 more fire trucks quickly arrived on the scene to help those first responders. The 130 courageous firefighters fought the fire for 12 hours when it was finally contained, with crews working until the following Monday to put out the fire completely. The firefighters did an unbelievably amazing job at fighting the fire, as it didn't spread any further than the vacant Donaldsons and the bank building, and thankfully, there were no civilian injuries. However, 10 firefighters were taken to Hennepin County Medical Center, treated for minor smoke inhalation, and were released in the coming days. Once the dust settled, roughly 500,000 square feet of office space was lost and $90 million of damage was done. But hanging in an exhibition on the skyway level of the bank building was a Curtiss biplane, Charles Lindbergh's first plane, untouched by the flames. The tragedy of the fire was followed by the gratefulness that no civilians were hurt and the realization of what could have been. If the fire happened just one day before, there would have been thousands of workers in the buildings of downtown and in their vehicles during rush hour. If the Minneapolis Fire Department wasn't quick to act and fight the fire in the best possible way, the heart of town would have been in ruin.
Wow, it's great that they managed to stop the spread so quickly.
Oh, for sure. Many people were even holding their breath, expecting the worst. In fact, Assistant Fire Chief Tim Dickinson had to make a tough call to his neighbor and president of the city council at the time, Alice Rainville, who was also my great aunt. At the time, she was in Los Angeles for a League of Cities conference, and he told her that if the wind were to continue to blow in its current direction, he would have to call the Dayton family and tell them he was going to implode Dayton's department store to act as a fire break. Thankfully, that never had to be done. Those firefighters really did save downtown.
Well, thank goodness for the firefighters and first responders. It would have definitely been a catastrophe if they wouldn't have done their jobs as perfectly as they did that day.
Yeah.
And that is a Thanksgiving to remember for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Michael.
Oh, sure thing. I always have a great time here sharing all this history.
All right, we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye. Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll be back for December's show when we'll have guests from the Mill City Farmers Market, Northeast Tea House, and Heroes Among Us. We'll share more local history, we'll learn more about what's going on in the Minneapolis riverfront, and we'll learn ways that we can cut down on waste. If you have show ideas or comments, feel free to send those to our producer, Becky Fillinger. She can be reached at Becky_Fillinger@hotmail.com. See you next month.